So, what did you think? Let's rank this film on the Cageometer.
All right, the big question. Vince, where does Moonstruck 1987 rate on your Cageometer?
All right. I feel bad. I wish I would have given Joe a higher rating because I feel bad putting Moonstruck at a 7 right there with Joe. Because I think overall Joe was a better story. I think a little more important story. But I feel like Moonstruck's a good movie. It's a fun movie. I forgot how funny it was at times. Like the first act, I think, is probably the slowest, roughest act of the whole film, and then it starts to find itself, and it picks up. And then I really like Nigel said, and I'll let you elaborate on it more. But it wasn't until that kitchen scene that really I got pulled back in, and I felt like it tidied everything up. And I remember, God, I feel like I watched this movie a lot when I was younger, not on my own doing, but like we had this substitute teacher that would always play movies when she'd take over a class, and this was like her go-to fucking film.
What class was that for?
I don't even remember what class. I mean, she would sub a bunch of different classes, and like this was for whatever reason like her go-to film. I don't know why. So like,
what a weird choice.
Yeah. So like I saw it a lot in school when she'd sub. I remember enjoying it, and then I remember watching it outside of school and thinking, oh yeah, that's a funny film. I think now being older and being able to look back on it and kind of see some of the themes that they're talking about, I really do appreciate the story that was being told, and like diving into the depths and psychology of relationships, and all that fun shit that I won't bore everybody with. I really appreciate it. So I give it a 7. I do feel bad that I put Joe on the same level, because I think overall Joe is a little more of an important story, and I wish I would have given it an 8. But I can't turn back time. As far as Cage goes, man, I feel like I don't know. I know this is early on, but comparing, like we talked about, he had Raising Arizona, Vampire's Kids that came out around the time. So it's hard for me to give this anything but a 6, because I feel like he didn't really add anything to the character. Personally, I don't think he did. And maybe that's because his character didn't have a lot to do in it. So maybe I'm being a little too critical there, but I feel like you could have plugged anybody in. They would have fit. I loved him in it. I thought he did a good job, but I don't really feel like he brought anything unique to that character. And, his performance was good. When I compare it to like Raising Arizona or Vampire's Kiss, I feel like it wasn't on par with those performances. And I know Vampire's Kiss gets panned and it's a meme, but listen to our breakdown of it. I think we all agree that he did a really good job at like devolving into that mental state. So I'll give his performance a 6 out of 10. It wasn't awful. It got a little cagey, which I enjoy, but like I said, I think you could have plugged anybody in. I think you could have plugged anybody in, and the movie still would have felt the way it felt. So I'll get 7 for film, 6 for Cage.
All right, Nigel, where does Moonstruck rate on your Cageometer?
I'll echo some more of what Vince said about how the first act, I really wasn't feeling it. Like the movie just kind of felt disjointed and a little weird. And I was kind of struggling to figure out why it was even nominated for awards, let alone won anything. I mean, at least winning for act. I can't remember which Academy Awards did it actually win. Was it just the
it
supporting
won
actor
Cher,
ones
won best actress, and Olympia Dukakis won
supporting
for
actress
supporting actress, and then Vincent Gardenia was nominated for best supporting actor as Loretta's dad, Cosmo.
Yeah.
Which I like. I guess I'll get into it in my part, but like, like.
But I think the acting was pretty good all over the place, across the board. The acting I thought was really good, and I think that's what made the movie work ultimately for me in the end. I'll put it at a 7 out of 10 as well. Like it was pretty solid. I'd never seen it before. I didn't have any preconceived notions of it aside from hearing it was sort of award-winning or an award-worthy movie. As far as rom-coms go, I don't really watch a lot of them, but I thought it was a bit more of a mature take than what you normally see in a rom-com, especially for something in the 80s. I thought that the message it was trying to get across about how like life and love are complicated and not, what everybody expects them to be necessarily, but you make the best of it, and it's never too late to have a second chance or to move on with dealing with the cards you're dealt, and I think it worked really well as a series of vignettes about all these different characters, just seeing little slices of these characters' lives and then how they all relate to each other. Literally, they're all related mostly, but how it all kind of swirls around and then at the end kind of comes together in that dinner table scene where they all kind of come up and everything gets tied up really neat, nice and neat. So yeah, it's a bit of 7 out of 10. It's enjoyable. Good movie. At first, I thought there wasn't really going to be any deeper meaning to anything, but as the movie went on, I realized more about these little motifs and themes that it was trying to show us. And I don't like the love story between Loretta and Ronnie as much as I like just everything else in the movie. I think that's what's keeping me from giving it a higher score. Is it's not as believable to me that these two would be head over heels with each other. I mean, maybe for a fling after 2 days, which. Maybe that's what they're going for with the movie, but I don't feel like it's a love story for the ages type of thing that seems like it should be in those annals of top romantic comedy movies. That it's in. But there's charming parts to it. It's got a lot of humor. It's got a lot of heart with the different characters and acting. It's not overly cynical. It's not overly rosy. It feels realistic and grounded. So it's a good, honest portrayal of how messy love can be in life. So I think it's a valid movie on those merits. For Cage, I'll be a little more generous. I'll give him a 7 out of 10 as well. Especially considering this is one of his earlier roles. I think he did a really good job as being kind of a breakout actor, like we said. This, Raising Arizona, and Vampire's Kiss, all within like the same year of each other almost. I don't know when he filmed them, but they're all 3 wildly different performances, different characters. He has a different impression in all of them, and I think he really did make an impression in this movie. Like introducing him the way they did in the bakery, you're like, this guy's crazy. You can't take your eyes off of him, but he's a little unhinged, but there's something, I don't know if there's something lovable about him like Loretta saw in him, but
passion.
There's definitely something memorable about him.
I think they were like, I don't know, I'm stepping on you a little bit, but I feel like they were going for kind of a Brando-esque, like young Brando was very much like that, very brash and passionate and like, because he brought so much fury to things. Everybody, fell in love with him as a person and as a character in movies. And I think that was what kind of Cage was going for a little bit.
It's like that magnetic presence, attracting people for it. So I think he succeeded in that, whether it was from watching impressionist German films or whatever, expressionism and whatever he did that he channeled for it, I think worked well for it. So like we said, not as great as some of the other performances he gave around that time or later in life, obviously, but I think it's a solid, memorable performance all around. So yeah, sevens for both the movie and for the actor.
Yeah.
For me.
On my Cageometer, I had a hard time with this because I didn't really love it the first rewatch because I hadn't seen it in a long time. And I still don't really understand all of the love for this movie because it really is a beloved film, particularly with women. And maybe that's the problem. Is I'm not a woman, so I don't really gravitate towards the themes quite as much. And I have a hard time understanding why you would fall madly in love with this psychopath right off the bat. But 6 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, which Last Emperor won for Best Picture that year. So maybe that explains it. It wasn't a really deep year for Best Picture. But then it's Best Screenplay, Olympia Dukakis winning for Best Supporting Actress. I'm was that an Oscar-worthy performance? I don't know. And then Cher winning for Best Actress? I don't know, man. It's a good movie. It's a solid movie, and I'm not knocking it, saying that it's a bad movie. I'm just saying, like, is this one of the greatest movies ever made? I don't know. Not to me.
Maybe it's a reflection of the time that we just can't appreciate because we weren't.
Could be, yeah.
We weren't adults at the time, or cognitive enough to really understand. In my case,
a lot of times
freaking alive.
I think Oscar movies sometimes are that. It's just like it was the perfect movie for the time.
For the time,
and if you're not in that time, maybe you don't understand it quite as well.
Yeah,
I do think there's an element to like it does something that maybe not a lot of rom-coms did at the time, like giving an honest portrayal of relationships, which in and of itself could be enough to get the Academy interested in. We need more movies that do something like this, that portray things in a realistic way.
And were there a lot
which now we sort of take it for granted because movies have trended more realism as time goes on and we're more used to it. But so maybe us watching it now are like, what's the big deal?
Right.
It was a very campy period of films back then, like the 80s in general. There was just a lot of like campy portrayals of love.
Yeah. Think of all the John Hughes films. And I mean, like up until now, up until this film, were there like mature female-led rom-coms? Because when I think of female-led rom-coms in the 80s, it's John Hughes, it's Molly Ringwald, it's like we talked about Pretty in Pink, 16 Candles, like those types of films, which really were specific to youth and like the young adult and coming of age and coming into your sexuality and all that shit. So I don't know, maybe like I said, maybe we just don't have the perspective to really understand how this fit at that time to speak for the time that it was taking place in.
Yeah. I think there were like all those Streisand led films at that point. And but I don't know. I'm not really sure.
Barbara Streisand.
Yeah, me too. I think that's another thing. It's kind of like, those people who were like big heroes to women, but not necessarily to men. And I don't know, I think maybe our perspective of this movie is different than it would be if we were a woman, and particularly maybe a middle-aged woman in the 80s. But yeah, I gave it a 7 as well. It's an enjoyable movie. It's solid. It's a weird movie. It's very strange at times. And the love affair between her and Ronnie felt forced in my mind. Yeah. I just didn't really feel like they had a connection that I really believed. Even towards the end, like I was just kind of like, from the beginning, I was like, why is this 40-year-old interested in this 20-year-old, And then if you just try and like suspend your disbelief a little bit and you just think of them as two people falling in love, it feels a little more natural. But like, it's just a strange like relationship between them. And then also like, why did you make Danny Aiello and Nicolas Cage brothers? Like, I mentioned this offline.
To heighten that difference, really stretch that difference.
I
between
guess
the two. And she's a woman who's got some kind of attraction to both ends of the spectrum. Old and stable, but not so exciting, versus youthful and
dangerous,
fierce, and unpredictable, and that wolf. Spirit of the wolf inside of him or whatever, and that resonates more with what she actually wants in life or at that age.
I mentioned this offline, but Nicolas Cage now is only 4 years older than Danny Aiello was in this movie. So it just feels really strange to have like a 54-year-old man and a 23-year-old be brothers, that one woman who is right in the middle of those two age groups going after. It felt really strange. And then like
she doesn't I mean, she seems youthful enough in her portrayal and stuff. She mentioned she's 37 and she's got gray hairs and stuff, but I don't know if it's the plastic surgery or just, Cher as a person maybe was more youthful or had the more youthful vigor or whatever. So, or maybe it's just that last gasp of youth, like you hit the end of your 30s and you feel like, it's not too late to have one last fling, step back into what I was like in my 20s before, it all till he turned into Johnny, or her dad or whatever,
Yeah.
or her mom.
Yeah, kind of like trying to recapture your youth, which I think is really what they were trying to go for. Was like, she's not old, but she feels old, and she feels like life has passed her by. But then somebody comes along and reminds her that no, she still has that fire within her, and she is still young and can still be that person and be passionate and find love again. As far as Cage, I waffle back and forth between a 6 and a 7 on this one because, like, I feel like the first time I watched it, when I just was watching it, when I do these things, I watch it unencumbered by like having to take notes or anything like that. I just watch it to enjoy the movie, and then I give my impression of the movie from that. But then when I do the breakdown, I go scene by scene by scene, and I feel like I gained more of an appreciation for his acting in the breakdown than I did the first time around. The first time around, it felt very unconnected. Like, his performance from one scene to another felt very different. He felt like different characters at different times. And watching it, breaking it down scene by scene, I feel like he basically is showing a very like real portrayal of a kind of fiery Italian person. It's like, oh, he's a kitten in the scenes where he doesn't feel, like he has to be passionate, and then he's just, a wolf in the other scenes. And I think that was what they were kind of going for, was like that he is that crazy guy, and she comes along and suddenly he's tamed back to being, the person that he was before he lost his hand. So he's been this angry, bitter kind of, I don't know, bitter, for lack of a better word, a person that didn't feel like he deserved love because he's disfigured, and of course she comes along and is like, that's ridiculous. Of course, you're still young, you're handsome, you have everything going for you, you own your own business, like, I guess. I don't know about the own business, but like obviously he's a man of he's deeply passionate. He loves the opera, so that he's, and like he points out a painting when they're there. So like obviously he's educated, and he's smart in a way that she's smart, whereas Johnny is not. Johnny's kind of an idiot in everything that we see him in. Which I think there's also mirrors of kind of like the girl that her dad is going after kind of reflects Johnny in a way, because it's like, both
Actually,
of them are smart,
point.
and
maybe that's why her dad doesn't like Johnny, because he's like, he's like the bimbo. He can tell that Johnny's basically a bimbo, just like his girlfriend, and he hates it. Like, it's not satisfied in that relationship.
Mr. C, you got good smarts.
Maybe it's his way
stuff.
of warning her away from going to marry a guy like that, because he sees that she'd be miserable because he's miserable about it.
Yeah, he never looks happy with that bimbo.
Yeah,
other than
and
when
obviously
he's like recounting his triumph that day over selling the yuppies.
Obviously, Rose is very smart as well, and he just wanted to have a fling with somebody that made him feel young again. And I feel like maybe, I don't know, because Ronnie obviously makes Loretta feel young again as well. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to give him a 7, I think, because I really did start to see the nuances of his character. Like when he starts to realize that he might not be able to keep Loretta after the opera, when she was actually like trying to pull away from him, that's when the wolf comes back out again. But like the wolf never shows up in any other spots. He's always this very nice, refined, young, passionate man, but he's very quiet and soft spoken in all the other scenes, and he's like very gentle when he comes in and meets her parents and stuff, and he wants to make a great impression because he genuinely loves Loretta and he wants to be a part of this family and wants to be with her. So I think Cage played it well, and he really created a character that I don't think exists anywhere else on film. I've never seen a character quite like this before, and that's, again, we keep going back to it, but like Cage has this way of like every time out, he creates something new that you're not expecting, that you didn't think he was going to bring to it, and didn't need to particularly bring anything new or original to it, but he did. And yeah, that's why we love him.
There's a moment that I forgot I wanted to call out. It's when he's sitting in the chair after Loretta has left to go home, and he's sort of like, he has that physicality again where he's sitting kind of slumped and he stands up and he walks away from the camera. You don't see his face, but you can see that he's contemplating something, or he reaches a decision or whatnot. And it's one of those strengths I think Nicolas Cage has, where he can give that physicality of something, whether it's trying to be intimidating or just trying to communicate his emotions through his physical body. I think he's always been very good at it. And he's sort of, we've mentioned it before. I've mentioned it before. I think he's underrated in that respect. I don't see it mentioned a lot, but I think he does a very good job at it. And that's one small little taste of it in this movie that I think he does a really good job at.
Yeah, you get a sense, and I mean, that's only like a 30-second scene, but you get the sense that he was making the decision right then and there. I'm going to go tell Johnny that I love Loretta, and I want, he had the choice of like either letting her go or, deciding to marry her. And that's when he decided to ask her to be his wife, was right in that moment. And he's like listening to his favorite opera. I don't remember if he takes the record, like he turns the record off and then he stands up, or if that was in a previous scene, but
I don't remember.
Can't remember either.
But yeah.
I think he stands up and walks over and takes the record off. Because he walks over and does something, but I can't quite remember what it was. I was just
it's almost like he's slumped back into the character that he was when we first met him,
right?
And then he stands up and becomes the proud person that
it's that you see that change in him as that's what I mean. He goes from this passive sitting in a chair to standing up and having that presence to him that he delivered pretty well.
I mean, we've said this many times, but it always seems like Cage gets passed over by the Academy, and like, if you're just handing out Oscar nominations to everybody, why didn't you give one to Cage?
Yeah, it's weird he didn't get nominated in this one.
But the guy or whatever his name is,
Vincent Gardenia,
him, that kid,
and then Olympia Dukakis. I mean, I feel like
there might have just been some inherent bias in the Academy, like favoring a guy representing an older man might have resonated more with them than a guy representing a younger man.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think he might have taken himself out of the running with I lost my hand. I lost my bride.